250 potential jurors have been summoned, again, 50 at a time, and they're going to be asked 47 different questions. And here's just a few examples. Do your views regarding the 2024 election or of any of the candidates for president in any way prevent you from being a fair and impartial juror in this case? Do you believe Robert Hunter Biden is being prosecuted in this case because his father is the president of the United States and a candidate for president? Do you disagree that the law should apply equally to all, including the son of the president? Do you think, are these the right questions? And how challenging could it be to pick a jury for a trial involving the president's son?
About as challenging as it was a few weeks ago to pick a jury in New York for the trial of a former president. But procedurally, this is going to be a lot different than it was in the New York State criminal trial of Donald Trump. In New York State, for example, lawyers are much more involved in the jury selection process. When you're in federal court, it really is the judge's show. So this is not a place where you're going to see a lot of attorney involvement and direct attorney interaction with the jurors. When you're in federal court, the judge handles the questioning, the judge handles the voir dire. The attorneys are present for everything, whether it be at sidebar, talking to a potential juror. But this is going to be the judge's show. Yes, the attorneys have had input up until now about the questions that are going to be asked, but expect this to move probably a lot faster than maybe we just saw with the last major trial, which was last week, of the former president, Donald Trump.
And you can't ignore the timing, right? Right after the verdict in that trial. So how do you ensure potential jurors who may be motivated by revenge don't get through?
Ensure, using that word, you can never ensure, because you never know whether a juror is ultimately being truthful. The entire system is premised upon the faith that regular citizens come in and tell the truth, that they are honest with not only the court, but themselves about their own biases. And, you know, maybe that's aided by the fact that not everybody really wants to serve on a jury, so they may have that motive to come up with reasons why they are not able to sit impartially. But it being very serious here, most jurors come in and they have an honest discussion internally about whether or not they can be biased. You saw it in the Trump trial, where more than half raised their hands and said, I can't be unbiased, and left. And ideally, that's what happens every time you try to seat a jury, when you go through voir dire, when you go through these questions. And what happens is, during this questioning, you really see a lot of people err on the side of, hey, I'm raising my hand and I just want to tell you a little about my background. And the judge will decide whether that story means they can be fair and impartial. So it really is a process by which judges try to really talk to the juror and find out, get to the bottom of their prior experience, whether it renders them fatally biased or they have biases that they can set aside and judge the case on the evidence and the facts.
Yeah, Ken has already mentioned some of the jurors who came forward saying, I can't be, fair and impartial here. Monica, President Biden is there in Wilmington, not at the courthouse, and the First Lady is there. We know Ashley Biden, the president's daughter, is also there to support her brother, her half-brother. What do we know about the president's mindset as his son goes to trial?
This has really taken an emotional toll on the First family, Anna, and that has been the case for as long as Hunter Biden has been in the throes of addiction and now on his path to recovery and now confronting all of these multiple legal challenges. And this is something that the president, as he wrote in this statement this morning, he is approaching it as a father, as a concerned parent, not as the current president of the United States in the midst of a superheated re-election battle. But of course, that is the backdrop to all of this. Still, the Biden campaign, the White House don't plan to have any kind of a rapid response operation or any kind of formal reaction to what's going on in Hunter Biden's proceedings. But they are, of course, putting this statement front and center. And the fact that the First Lady is there really tells you everything you need to know about how this is affecting them from a family standpoint, from those dynamics. And the president even referenced in this statement that the of course, challenge of coming through something like the addiction that Hunter battled during the time period that this case is going to cover has been difficult, but that they are so proud of the man that he is today. And they write that they really have boundless love for him. And they are hoping, his advisors tell me, that voters will get a sense of what many families struggle with when it comes to this kind of substance abuse. And they're hoping that voters will see this as, again, parents who are really worried about their son, who want to be there for him, who want to stand by him, and not about these larger questions. But of course, we know over the course of the many last few weeks leading up to the verdict in former President Trump's case, and then President Biden's own words on Friday, when it comes to the actual legal matters here, the president's message is expected to be the same, that no matter what this jury ends up deciding, it should be respected, and that the rule of law is paramount. Still, we have to just appreciate the fact that the president in the last week has been, of course, marking the somber anniversary of the death of his other son, Beau Biden. This is coming at a time when, of course, he's preparing for the first general election debate. All of these things are coming together at the same time, and that certainly weighs on the president. It weighs on the first lady, but they want their message today to be one of, we will support our family no matter what, and we hope that Americans see that for what it is.
So can lay out the timeline for us of how this case is going to roll out and potential witnesses.
Right, Anna. So we expect jury selection to take between 1 and 2 days, probably sometime into tomorrow. And then the judge has said she expects a 1 to 2 week trial. And it's a pretty simple case, frankly. He filled out a form. He bought a gun. The government says he was addicted to drugs at the time. They have to show that he was using drugs. And so a couple of the witnesses they're going to put on, it's going to be tough for the Biden family. Kathleen Buell, Hunter Biden's ex-wife, and Hallie Biden, who was romantically involved with Hunter Biden after her husband, Beau Biden, died. And she was actually the person who took the Colt revolver from him. He possessed it only 11 days and left it in a dumpster because she was concerned that, according to evidence that we've seen, that he was using drugs at the time, that he was a danger to himself and others. So she's going to be asked to testify about that. There will also be some evidence, electronic evidence, texts, photos, emails, WhatsApp messages, some of which was on that infamous Hunter Biden laptop that he left at a repair shop in Delaware. The defense will have a chance to challenge the authenticity of any messages they believe are fake, but the government has authenticated much of that evidence, and they're going to use it to show, they say, that he was using drugs at the time.
Danny, just how straightforward is this case for prosecutors, and if you're the defense, how do you counter?
This is a gun possession case. It's also a false statement case, because when you fill out the 4473, the federal firearm document that you fill out when you buy a firearm, you make certain statements. So they're alleging that he made false statements about whether or not he is a unlawful user or addicted to a controlled substance, and then that he possessed the firearm while he was a user or an addict to a controlled substance. So on the government side, straightforward. They're going to introduce evidence that you don't normally have in these cases, which, by the way, are very rarely brought. But you don't normally have
evidence like his own words in his memoir.
Right, exactly. Most criminal defendants have not written a memoir that the government can mine for statements that are harmful to the defendant. So you don't normally have this much evidence of addiction from the defendant himself. So that's why the government sees this as a case that is easier to get a conviction in. So they're basically going to lay out the form, the 4473, the statements by Hunter Biden, any other evidence that shows that he may have been an addict at the time he possessed the firearm, and at the time that he made the statement that he was not an addict or an unlawful user. The defense's case, little tougher, but they may argue, they've given a little forecast. For example, they may try to argue that Hunter, at the time he filled out the form, had been in rehab for, I think it was about 11 days. And that highlights the, I guess you would say, the nebulous nature of this particular subsection of the statute. An unlawful user or an addict. What is an addict? Yes, it's defined by U.S. law, but what does it mean that Hunter may have thought, oh, I'm 11 days clean, I'm sober, I am no longer an addict? That I expect to see as one of the themes of the defense here.
All right, Danny Cevallos and Ken Dilanian, Monica Alba, thank you all.